Hey guys, so in this video I'm going to show you how to do the additive method of adding clay to your tile to create a very three-dimensional look. I'm going to show a couple ways of doing this using leftover pieces of our slab or a new slab if you want to roll out a fresh slab piece. I'm going to use some leftovers here. Or just clay from our bag, creating a more organic type of shape. Now, depending on what you do, you're either going to create something that is bas relief, very close to the surface, or alto relief, very high off of the surface. So just keep that in mind as you're designing. Now, I'm using the combination method. So as you can see, I have subtracted areas away before I start working. You do not have to subtract if you are using just the additive method, just to show you guys what it looks like to have that subtracted area on there. I will go back and clean it up when I am all done. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. With the additive method, you are adding clay to your tile. Where you are adding clay is where you want your design to pop out the most. So first method is to use slabs. So I'm going to, it's kind of a little bit wet, but I'm going to kind of salvage the leftover slabs from creating the tile, because this gives me a nice surface to add very bas relief, those flat surface designs. If you do not have leftover scraps from your tile, or they're very hard to peel apart, depending on how wet the bag is, you can always roll out another slab. If you need the tutorial for the slab rolling, it is up on Classroom. All right, so I have some slabs here to work with. What I want to start with is adding some depth to my fox. Now I have this fox body and tail design. The tail isn't going to be too far off the tile, but I really want my fox body to stand out. So if I'm using a slab method, I'm going to need to recreate or trace that fox design onto a separate slab. Now that'll be really easy if you happen to still have your design on paper. If not, you're going to want to just redraw it directly onto clay and follow the same steps of transferring your designs onto clay. So I'm going to go ahead and kind of line them up. I'm going to make sure that the slab actually covers the entire fox so I can kind of see the design through the paper. You do want to use kind of a nicer slab, so this one's slightly nicer than the rest, and I'm making sure that the area is big enough. Once it is on that separate slab piece, just like the design transfer video and what I showed in class, I'm going to draw that design directly into the clay. I'm using that second method because that's my favorite. Now the paper may want to break on you just a little bit because it's already been transferred in. Just do your best to try to keep as much of it as possible intact. Mine's really wanting to break there. So getting that design transferred onto this slab, I'm being careful not to break through. That means all the design, including all the face, because as soon as I put it on there, I'm going to lose all of the details that I've done. That is in this method. So adding those designs. There we go. Now again, I'm just wanting to add the fox body. I'm not doing the tail. So it's not the full design. It's whatever you want to stand out the most. So once I have that designed there, you can see he transferred over. I'm going to want to grab my toothpick and trace the area around my design. So it got a little bit smushy, that's fine. I'm just going to be kind of careful where I am designing, where I'm drawing. So toothpick around the outside edge. I don't have to get all those details that I just did, because what I'm shooting for here is to cut the fox out. So again, outside like that. So you can see I've left all the details on there, but the outside I have done in toothpick. And I'm going to trace around again. I'm just going to keep tracing around and around until it cuts through, just like when we cut our tiles out of our slabs. Just tracing over and over again until it cuts through. I don't want to force it. I want to be super gentle. So tracing over and over again. All right, so then once it's been traced and cut, I can then pull that design away from the slab. Now, if she's not the prettiest thing on the planet, don't worry, you can always smooth clay out and get it looking tip-top. So there I have my fox, just the fox itself, not the fire or any of that. So I'm gonna move that off to the side. Now before you attach your design, you want to make sure it lines up properly, that it's clean enough that you can clearly see all your design you're adding. I don't want to have done all that work for it to not look good. So like here I have some overhang, I'm going to chop that off. Clean up the in-between of the legs, just to make it nice and smooth. Like so. Now to actually physically add it, reminder from last semester that anytime that you are combining clay together, you have to score. And scoring again are I'm going to flip my design over so this is backside. Scoring are these cross hatch marks. So I'm going to get some hatch marks across. These are hatch marks and cross hatch marks that you put into clay to bind that clay together. Clay really likes to reject itself. It does not like combining with other pieces of clay on its own, so it needs a little bit of help in creating a suction cup effect. So I've done that to my design. I now need to do it onto my tile itself. So where I'm attaching, so where that fox is, I need to do those same marks. You want to go deep enough for it to actually do something, but not so deep that you're killing your tile in the process. So the entire area that's going to be touching, I need to create those score marks. Like so. So both sections have those score marks. So now, when I go to attach it, one thing you can do, I have some water here and my sponge. I can just kind of dab a little bit of water to act as glue instead of using slip if you want. That's optional. Just because we're working with leather hard clay, it may need a little extra help to squish on there. Once I'm ready though, I can go ahead, push it down onto the surface, making sure it is lined up like so. And then take my modeling tool. I'm going to carefully lift this guy up so you can see it. Take my modeling tool and smooth out the edges of the design into the clay itself. Like so. So I would want to do that all the way around, every crevice, because you really want this design sticking onto that tile. If it's not stuck on, as it dries, if you guys noticed from your last semester project, if you didn't score properly or didn't smooth it out properly, some of the areas got a little cracked, starts to want to fall apart, and we don't want that. So you really got to take your time smoothing out the clay into the surface underneath. I would then take some time to clean up all of that area, making sure I got all of that in, like so, and really smoothing it out into the surface of the tile. So using my finger, the modeling tool, just like that. Now from this point, if you have small details like I do, you can choose to do more layers up and up and up, or you can actually use a little bit of that subtractive method. If you didn't watch the subtractive method video or didn't see me demoing it in class, you can go back to that video. For example, I could make my legs here recede back a little bit by just scraping away some of that layer. Not too much, because I still want it to pop out. But I could alter that slab once it's on there. So you're not stuck to that same height. It's just a starting point, depending on your designs. You can see that little level of depth that I'm getting now by getting the legs a little bit further back. Adds a little bit of intrigue into my design. And I'll clean all of that up as I work. So that's one method. Again, I can then subtract, add, continue going, all of that. Just make sure it's much cleaner, like right now I'm doing it fast for the demo. But you do want to make sure she is really nice and clean all the way around. You're not seeing any of those seams. Super clean. All right. Before I move on to the other additive method, I do want to point out that petals are really easy to make out of slab pieces. So if you're doing a flower design and you want your petals to like start on the tile and kind of pour out of the tile itself, if that makes sense, you would take a slab and the petal shape, you kind of do an individual petal like that. Now depending on the type of flower, so like a rose petal is going to be a little bit wider like that. A carnation or any of the typical type of flowers, this one's going to be your best bet there. But any type of flower you do, you can do individual petals the same way, drawing each individual petal onto your slabs and cutting them out. So this is just an aside because a lot of people have flowers in their designs, and I want them to have the opportunity to make it really 3D in a cool way. So cutting out that individual petal. Now this is a really thick slab for it, so I would probably want to have a thinner slab for this process. There we go. I'm actually going to thin it out myself just to make it a little easier to work with. So I have one petal. If I had flowers in my design, I could, I'm going to add a little bit of water to my hands because it's drying out. I could take the petal and kind of curl it. Just a little bit of curling. So if you have a flower, you can curl each individual petal cut from a slab and add it to your design, poking out as much as you want. So you can see I get a lot of depth by adding a petal like that. Wherever you add it though, make sure that you score on the base and wherever it's touching. I'm gonna wet my tile real quick because she's drying out. I wouldn't recommend that for most of you guys, but this guy's been out for like an hour or so. There we go. All right. So the other additive method, instead of using a slab, especially if you don't have any extra slabs, you're not using that clay, you would use your bag of clay and whatever clay you got. So like I'm just pinching off a section right here. You can add depth organically to your slab. So I'm just kind of working the clay in my hand for a second. I want my fox face to have a very organic fox face, so it looks naturally like the fox is sticking its head out of the tile itself. So I need the cheek to be a little bit wider, the ears to stick back the way they need to be, so I'm just kind of clearing that area. So I can take clay itself and kind of sculpt it in my hand and kind of working it onto the clay as I go. Now, if I do this, I still have to score. So this is a very organic process. Again, I'm adding a little depth to the fox's cheek and face because that sticks out on an actual fox. Again, totally dependent on your design. Pinch off some clay. So I'm working organically without a slab, just kind of molding it in my hand as you would any sculpture, kind of fitting it to that fox face, pulling that up to score, getting those score marks on there, get a little bit of water, and now I can kind of blend it into my tile. So again, I'm having personally my fox face, I want it to look more like a realistic fox. So I'm sculpting now directly onto the tile. I want the cheeks to be a little bit wider. So I'm really squishing and sculpting. This is more of a free form process. It's a little difficult if you're not used to sculpting or working three-dimensionally. However, it does feel natural once you start it because you're just following your kind of designs. I just want to give that option for those who definitely want things that are really three-dimensional. So you can see I have this nice clear ridge of fur that'll lead into the body. It's a lot clearer than it was when it was just that slab. So for my design, I really like having this extra sense of depth. And I can do that anywhere on my sculpture. So I want to add a little bit to the chest. I could go back to my fire and add some depth to my fire. Whatever I want to do, this is very organic, very to your design. So see, I'm just going to add and blend. Blending is the key here. Like so. Smoothing it in with my fingers or the modeling tool. Smooshing into the surface. So it's nice and clearly a fox. And I'm going to keep working on this so it looks like an actual fox with actual anatomy. That'll be what I'm doing with this sculpture, is a lot of this organic additive process. So if you're comfortable sculpting, I highly recommend this method. If you're a little confused about this, I would recommend using the slab, rolling out extra slabs, all that fun stuff, because that's a really easy, clear way of adding to your sculpture. But if you just want that alto relief style that has a little bit more depth, see, I'm adding an ear now. This is really wet clay, so that's why I didn't score it yet. And I can still work subtractively. So if I want that ear to be realistic, scooping a little hole out of it, like so, kind of building up a sculpture on top of this tile. So that is another way of doing the additive method. So you're going to work additively, subtractively, whatever you want to do for your design. You can also always add details with toothpick to get all the fine lines, but I really want to see some really cool three-dimensional stuff going on in this tile. Take your time on it. You do not have to rush it. We do have some time in class to work on this sculpture. So please, 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 please take your time, make it look really nice, really good, the best that you can get it, because I want to see what that looks like. I'm excited. So this has been the additive method. You would continue doing this back and forth if you're doing combination, additive, subtractive, whatever, until you are satisfied with the design. All right, so that's it. Email me if you have any questions. Have a good one. Bye-bye.